Imagine a massive wall being built across Africa, but with no concrete, steel, bricks, or stone. From above, it does not even look like a wall, but like green islands scattered across a sea of dry land. The ambition is to restore 100 million hectares of degraded land in one of the harshest dry regions on Earth. Along with the land, the initiative aims to absorb 250 million tons of carbon and create 10 million green jobs. To reach those goals, UNCCD has estimated that at least about $33 billion would be needed. By simple logic, planting trees in a water-scarce region like this should be an almost impossible battle. A sapling can be planted in minutes, but it must survive several dry seasons before it truly matters. If water is not retained, heavy rain can run off the surface before roots have time to use it. If wind and runoff keep stripping the soil away, newly planted greenery can disappear surprisingly fast. And if people cannot make a living from restored land, no fence can protect the results for long. Yet in many places, land that seemed exhausted is growing grass, supporting trees, and becoming productive again. In some places, the solution begins not by planting new trees, but by protecting shoots already alive underground. Elsewhere, a small pit, a stone line, or a strip of grass in the right place can matter more than thousands of seedlings. This wall, therefore, does not need to be continuous, and the number of trees planted cannot tell the whole story. This is the Great Green Wall, a long struggle to awaken millions of pieces of land losing their ability to sustain life. To understand that struggle, the Sahel must be seen not as desert, but as a fragile transition zone along the Sahara. It has rainy seasons, grasslands, shrubs, farming, and livestock, but water is always a limited resource. When rainfall becomes unreliable, one poor season can leave land bare longer and slow the return of vegetation. Land does not have to become sand dunes. Degradation often begins quietly as plant cover and fertility decline. As vegetation thins, soil receives more direct sunlight, dries faster, and becomes easier for wind to carry away. When intense rain arrives, hardened soil can force water to run across the surface instead of soaking deeper. Fast-moving water carries topsoil away, while what remains becomes poorer and even less capable of holding moisture. It is a dangerous loop. Fewer plants weaken soil, weaker soil holds less water, and plants struggle even more to return. Farming faces pressure too, because the same land must feed people, while natural recovery periods become shorter. Grazing does not automatically cause desertification, but too much pressure in one place can prevent grass from recovering. Fuelwood collection, agricultural expansion, and the loss of perennial vegetation can also remove the anchors that hold soil. Climate change does not cause every problem, but it can make drought, heat, and water uncertainty harder to manage. So the image of the desert moving south is memorable, but it does not fully describe how land degradation happens. Two neighboring fields can respond completely differently depending on their soil, water, vegetation, and management. That is why one uniform solution stretching across a continent could never fit every landscape. One area may need windbreaks, another water retention, while somewhere else needs restored pasture or farmland. The real problem is not stopping sand with trees, but restoring the ability of an entire landscape to function. From that contradiction, the idea of a tree belt gradually gave way to something far more complex. The first response sounds intuitive. If land is losing green cover, plant a line of trees to bring it back. Tree rows can reduce wind, hold soil, and create shade, which made the idea of a green wall powerfully attractive. But a young tree in the Sahel needs more than a hole. It needs water, protection, suitable genetics, and years of care. If the species does not fit local soil or rainfall, even a major planting campaign can leave many dead trees behind. Planting, therefore, creates only a beginning. Survival afterward determines whether the landscape truly changes. In many drylands, farmers discovered another advantage. Living tree stumps and root systems were already hidden underground. Instead of removing every shoot to keep fields clear, they can select the strongest shoots and let them grow. This method uses root systems already adapted to drought, instead of forcing a seedling to build everything from scratch. That is the logic of managed natural regeneration, Do not build a new forest if nature still has foundations in place. But trees are only part of the solution. Where water disappears too quickly, the ground must first learn to keep rain. Small planting pits can collect water and organic material, creating wetter pockets directly around developing roots. Stone lines placed along contours slow runoff and give the soil behind them more time to absorb water. These low structures look modest, but they change how long water remains in contact with the soil. When water slows down, sediment and organic matter are more likely to stay instead of being washed from fields. Land begins to recover, not when it turns green overnight, but when its water and soil cycles start changing direction. Only then do trees, grasses, crops, and longer-lasting ground cover begin shielding the soil from sun and wind. The imagined wall starts breaking into smaller pieces: a field, a pasture, a watershed, a village. When those small pieces are connected by planning, finance, and communities, a continental initiative can truly emerge. The African Union launched the Great Green Wall in 2007 as a shared response to land degradation and desertification. The early image was powerful, a belt of trees stretching across Africa as a living boundary against dry land. But field experience quickly showed that a tree line cannot solve depleted soil, water scarcity, livelihoods, and governance at once. Trees grow on land used by people, so land rights and the right to benefit determine who will care for them. Water crosses many fields, so even a good retention structure must fit the surrounding flow of the landscape. Livestock move across grasslands, so restoring one place while ignoring grazing routes can simply shift pressure elsewhere. Restoration, therefore, had to move beyond planting sites toward managing how soil, water, vegetation, and people interact. That is when the Great Green Wall increasingly became a restoration mosaic rather than a single green line. One area may prioritize agroforestry, where perennial trees coexist with crops and everyday farming. Another may prioritize grasslands, restoring cover so soil is no longer exposed directly to wind and rain. In a small watershed, the priority may be slowing water before increasing the density of trees. In a village, the priority may instead be nurseries, seed sources, tools, and jobs that keep restoration going. Projects therefore need more than foresters. They need farmers, pastoralists, scientists, and local authorities. Scientists can measure soil and water, but local people know which places keep trees alive through the dry season. Farmers know which ground floods temporarily, where livestock usually pass, and which tree species are actually useful. When local knowledge meets scientific data, restoration becomes less dependent on applying the same decision everywhere. Investment must also pass through many layers: soil, water, planting material, infrastructure, training, markets, and management capacity. If funding covers only planting, projects may run short precisely when maintenance becomes most important. Success, therefore, has to mean healthier soil, longer tree survival, and livelihoods capable of sustaining those gains. UNCCD increasingly describes the Great Green Wall as a mosaic of green and productive landscapes across multiple countries. This is the fundamental shift, from building a visible object to restoring a living system that is harder to see. To understand why that shift makes sense, look down to where the real struggle happens: the top few centimeters of soil. Healthy soil is not lifeless dust. It is a structure of minerals, organic matter, pores, roots, and countless small organisms. When the ground is covered, raindrops do not strike bare soil with their full force. Ground cover slows the water, reduces soil splash, and helps prevent the surface from sealing into a hard crust. When soil stays porous, water can enter tiny spaces instead of concentrating into runoff across the surface. Roots continue opening pathways through soil, while organic matter helps the structure retain water and nutrients. A living tree, therefore, adds more than green above ground. It changes the physical environment beneath its own canopy. Its crown provides shade that cools the soil, while fallen leaves add material that soil organisms can recycle. Shrubs and grasses do similar work closer to the ground, turning bare soil into a layered living surface. But for that cover to develop, rain must remain long enough, which is why water harvesting structures matter. A curved earth bund placed correctly can catch small flows and spread moisture across a wider area around plants. Contour stone lines do not stop water completely. They simply slow it down and reduce its power to carry soil. As flow speed drops, fine sediment can settle, gradually making the soil behind the stones more fertile. Small pits in fields also create pockets of opportunity where seeds meet water, organic matter, and softer soil. A field does not need equal moisture everywhere. It needs enough favorable spots for plants to begin reshaping the microclimate. Managed natural regeneration uses another advantage. Old trees can retain deep roots even after their stems were cut. Those roots already cross difficult soil layers, so new shoots do not need to rebuild the entire system from zero. Farmers select strong stems, prune competing shoots, and protect young growth from cutting or early grazing. Across several seasons, managed shoots can become trees that provide shade, fodder, fuel wood, or other useful products. This is the key point. A tree that provides value to the landholder has many more reasons to be protected. Agroforestry goes further by arranging trees so they support the land while remaining compatible with production. Too much canopy can compete for light or water, so restoration does not mean turning every field into forest. The goal is to find a structure that gives ecological benefits while still producing what local people need. For grasslands, the mechanism is different. Plants need time to regrow before they are repeatedly grazed or trampled. Managing when and where livestock move can give some areas enough rest to rebuild their ground cover. When grass returns, roots hold soil, leaves slow near-ground wind, and the vegetation becomes forage for livestock. Windbreaks work by slowing airflow, not by creating a solid wall against blowing sand. Slower wind carries less energy to remove soil, so land behind the trees experiences less erosion. When many small measures work together, the landscape begins retaining more water, soil, shade, and biomass each season. That slow accumulation is what builds the Great Green Wall. Not construction, but the recovery of self-sustaining function. But ecosystems alone are not enough. People need benefits before those practices become durable choices. Trees can provide fodder, fruit, seeds, fuel wood, or shade depending on species and local traditions. Soil that retains more water can support production, turning ground cover into an economic benefit as well as an environmental one. When products have a market, keeping a tree can become an asset rather than an obstacle to clear from a field. That is why livelihoods sit at the center of the Great Green Wall. Green survives longest when someone has reason to protect it. The Great Green Wall therefore runs on two loops. Healthy land supports people, and people's benefits help protect healthy land. When either loop breaks, restoration can be more fragile than the green surface visible to a camera. The first hidden cost is time. Trees can be planted in a day, but stable soil recovery often takes many seasons. During that period, drought, fire, livestock, pests, disease, or simple neglect can destroy young trees. Counting newly planted trees is easy, but it can exaggerate success if survival is not checked afterward. A planting site may look green in the rainy season, then reveal many empty spaces when the dry season returns. A dead tree is more than a lost tree. It also represents water, labor, planting material, and money that failed to create recovery. The second risk is choosing the wrong place. Restoration plans on paper do not guarantee a design fits real terrain and water flow. A badly placed bund can fail, while the wrong tree species can compete with local production needs. The third risk is maintenance. Water structures fill with sediment, fences break, and young trees still need people to repair them. If funding ends before maintenance does, a restoration project can weaken just as it begins to work. Another challenge is data. Restoration spans many countries, organizations, and methods, making consistent monitoring extremely difficult. Even a hectare described as restored can mean different things if one project measures trees while another measures soil or productivity. That means an impressive total can hide the more important question: is the land actually functioning better? Finance creates another paradox. The ambition is enormous, but every pit, tree row, and stone line depends on local resources. UNCCD has estimated that at least about $33 billion would be needed to pursue Great Green Wall ambitions by 2030. Money pledged is not the same as money reaching a field. Between them are procedures, projects, capacity, and disbursement. When donors follow different standards, local agencies may have to spend significant resources on coordination and reporting. But poor coordination is even riskier, because separate projects can overlap in one place while leaving another untouched. Land use rights can also be complicated, because the same landscape may support farming, grazing, fuelwood collection, and water access. A measure that helps farmers but blocks livestock routes can create conflict instead of sustainable restoration. Restoring land, therefore, also means redesigning how different groups share a scarce ecosystem. That is why a project can succeed technically but fail socially, eventually losing its ecological gains as well. The green wall now looks more fragile. It may not collapse because of sand, but fade because nobody remains to maintain it. The climax is not one single storm, but the moment enormous ambition collides with the real speed of implementation. The 2030 goals remain immense, while restoring every hectare requires sustained fieldwork and long-term monitoring. Great Green Wall implementation reports have highlighted bottlenecks in organization, coordination, policy integration, and information flows. Importantly, those bottlenecks are not caused by humans forgetting how to plant a tree. They come from the challenge of turning thousands of small actions into a system stable enough to continue for years. Imagine a large planting campaign just before the rains, with young trees covering an entire site. The rainy season arrives, leaves burst out, and from a distance the whole area seems to have been healed. Then the rain stops, the ground dries, livestock return, and every tree must prove it can survive on its own. If water is not retained, trees die. If communities see no benefit, fences and maintenance disappear too. That creates an uncomfortable question. Trees were planted, but was the land itself actually restored? If the answer depends only on planting day, temporary greenness can easily be mistaken for a recovered ecosystem. Real restoration must continue after project teams leave, when only the dry season, local people, and the land remain. This is also where the wall metaphor fails. It makes success look like length and tree counts. In reality, a network of healthy farms and living grasslands can be worth more than a long but fragile tree row. A field with natural regeneration may not look like a forest project, yet it has living roots and people caring for them. A low stone line almost disappears into the landscape, yet it can hold the soil that seasonal rain would otherwise remove. Arrested grassland creates no dramatic spectacle, yet it can rebuild cover before the next dry season. The Great Green Wall begins winning in places hardest to photograph: wetter soil, deeper roots, and better management decisions. But those invisible successes are harder to communicate than a straight line of trees, so the old misunderstanding survives. The gap between an easy image and a hidden mechanism becomes one of the initiative's biggest challenges. If success rewards only trees planted, the system may favor easy-to-count actions over harder but more durable results. That pressure forced the Great Green Wall to evolve. Stop chasing the shape of a wall and start following the function of the land. The new response begins by treating land restoration as rural development, not as a standalone tree planting campaign. That brings small farms, value chains, local markets, and employment into the same story as trees and soil. The Great Green Wall Accelerator was created to improve coordination, monitoring, and connections between finance and implementation needs. Better monitoring helps separate recently planted land from places where soil, productivity, and vegetation cover have genuinely improved. Observation from above can reveal vegetation change, but ground checks are still needed to understand what is actually happening. A greener patch in satellite imagery could be trees, grass, or crops, so field data still determines the interpretation. Tracking which trees survive the dry season matters more than recording only what was planted at the start of the rains. Monitoring the soil matters too. Is more water soaking in? Is erosion declining? And is ground cover lasting longer? Livelihood monitoring answers the final question. Are people gaining enough to keep protecting the restored land? If benefits appear only years later, Programs may need transitional support so households can absorb the early costs. Training also changes. People need skills in water management, pruning, and soil restoration, not only tree planting. Local nurseries can supply better adapted planting material, reduce transport, and create economic activity inside communities. Where natural regeneration works well, large nurseries may not even be necessary because the future trees are already beneath the field. That can reduce some costs and avoid bringing distant trees into places where native vegetation is better adapted. Modern restoration, therefore, asks not how many trees to plant, but which mechanism is affordable, appropriate, and durable here. The answer can change within a few kilometers because soil, rainfall, terrain, livelihoods, and land rights are different. That flexibility makes the Great Green Wall harder to summarize in one image, but far more realistic on the ground. Instead of building the same structure everywhere, the newer system tries to help each landscape recover in the way that fits it. The biggest misunderstanding can now be removed. The Great Green Wall is not one continuous row of trees across Africa. It began with a powerful tree belt image, but the African Union now frames it as a broader movement for restoration and resilience. A second misunderstanding is that desertification is simply a sea of sand advancing forward, so a barrier can stop it. In reality, degradation can happen inside farmland as soil structure, vegetation cover, and productivity slowly decline. A third misunderstanding is that more trees are always better. Density, species, and purpose must all fit local conditions. On some farms, a few well-placed trees can be more useful than dense planting that forces trees and crops to compete. A fourth misunderstanding is that newly planted trees are always better than natural regrowth, even though old roots can be the greatest advantage. A fifth misunderstanding is that fighting desertification is only about protecting nature. In reality, it is directly tied to livelihoods. If restoration reduces income or removes essential resources without alternatives, people are unlikely to maintain it voluntarily. Local people are therefore not supporting actors in the Great Green Wall. They are its largest distributed maintenance system. The real wall does not stand between the Sahara and people. It exists in how people keep land capable of recovery. The modern turning point is clear in the African Union's 2024-2034 strategy for the Great Green Wall Initiative. The new framework emphasizes an integrated, comprehensive approach to land restoration and climate-resilient development. In other words, the best solution is not to make the old wall thicker, but to abandon the wall idea itself. An adaptive system must accept that climate changes, rainfall varies, and methods that work today may need adjustment tomorrow. That turns management into continuous learning. Test, measure, observe the dry season, then adapt before the next cycle. A failed site does not necessarily prove restoration is useless. It may reveal that the species, design, or management system was wrong. Success, therefore, is not copying a winning model, but understanding why it worked and whether local conditions are truly similar. In the future, the challenge is not only expanding restoration, but preventing recovered land from slipping back into degradation. An extreme dry season can still test trees, grasslands, and water supplies even after years of restoration. Resilience, therefore, does not mean avoiding damage. It means absorbing a shock and finding a way to recover. A system with native trees, covered soil, and diverse livelihoods usually has more pathways to recover after a shock. Perhaps this is the deepest measure of the Great Green Wall. After a shock, does the land still have enough life to return? If the answer is yes, the wall has achieved something greater than stopping a desert. It has restored the land's ability to recover. On land that was once hard and bare, a farmer now walks among young trees, fresh grass, and returning crops. There is no tall wall in front of him, only soil holding rain better and roots reaching deeper underground. The camera rises. One green patch appears, then another, connected by grasslands, farms, trees, and communities caring for them. In the end, the giant green wall is not a straight line. It is millions of dying landscapes being awakened one by one.